Hello everyone, welcome to another beer review. Now, today we're doing another beer from the Longman Brewery, and again it was kindly donated by John Morris. Thank you very much, it's very much appreciated, and I'm definitely a lucky person for people donating beers for me to review. I mean, sometimes it's a cases of after tasting them you might wish they hadn't donated them, but the Longman Brewery has got quite a good reputation, so I think it's a case of, while it might not be the best beer in the world, I don't think it's going to be undrinkable or sickeningly sweet or just sickening anywhere. So it's a Sunday video, if you hadn't guessed. There's no whiskey, and hopefully there should be no fear of this being a particularly bad ale. Might not be a wonderful ale, but it shouldn't really be in a bad ale. And like I said, I didn't pay for it, so I don't really care. Now, at this moment, that might change after I've tasted it. Right, so today we're doing the Longman Old Man Ale, which is the original old ale from them. It's 4.3. This is the one that I know about. I have had it before, but that was, oh God, ages ago. And I had it at the time, it was a bit of a kind of a tasting session. So there was beers going here, there and everywhere. And I'll be totally honest, I can't quite remember what it was like. I know it was a bit of a more of a richer ale. It's 4.3%, but it's got a little bit more to it, a little bit more malt forward. And yeah, I think I liked it. I don't recall. See, what a lot of times is the case is of after tasting a heck of a lot of beers, beers tend to stand out for being bad beers or having bad parts to them and things like this. So if I can't quite remember what this beer is like or whether I enjoyed it or not, that means I probably did. Because if I didn't, it would have stood out and I'd be able to tell you, because these are the things I remember. Not the good things. The good things I'm looking for and enjoy. The things that stand out to me, especially in my memory, is the bad things. You know? And if it's a bad beer, I'll remember it. Or if it's an okay beer, but there's something not so good in it, then I would remember. I don't have these recollections, I don't have these memories, so that tells me it should be a good beer. So a little bit of spiel on the back. So the Old Man Ale. This original dark beer has soft malt notes of coffee and chocolate that combine with a pleasant light hoppiness to create a rich, full tasting old ale of times gone by. And there you go. So appearance or colour is oaky brown. I don't know, I've suddenly gone all hoarse now, you know. Anyway, aroma is coffee, molasses and roasted. Oh, I do like the smell of roasted. And, oh my God, taste sharp, roasted and coffee. And if you look at it, sweetness is 2.5 out of 5. And bitterness is 4 out of 5. So there's a little bit more bitterness. So there you go. So yeah, I think I should enjoy this. I think it's going to be a good Sunday video. I bloody hope so now. I'm getting my hopes up. Which for me usually is a dangerous thing, because if I get my hopes up, it usually all goes Pete Tong very, very quickly. And then you all get to laugh at me. Look at that twat suffering. Yeah, well, I choose to put it out there. At the end of the day, you're quite entitled to point your finger and say, twat, and laugh away. Right, I'm pouring. Oh. Ooh. That's giving me a bit of, what did they call it? Oaky Brune. Right, anyway, Moki brown. I would have said more fucking creosote brown. So, anyway, if you don't get that joke, is that creosote's a wood preservative that you'd put on kind of pine and all the kind of softer woods and things like that. You wouldn't really use creosote on harder woods so much, you know, like oak. Well, it'd be a bloody waste if you did. You know, if you ever wondered, look at your telegraph poles and railway sleepers, they're all kind of usually dipped and kind of steeped into creosote. Although I think creosote's actually bad now. I think it's classed as bad and that type of stuff, you know, because some person says it's bad. So looking at it, yeah, it's kind of fairly dark. I would say yes, it's kind of dark chestnut, kind of dark brown colour. Or kind of nice kind of creosote tones, but you can see, you can see with a bit of light's doing, you know, it's not completely black, so you are getting light kind of coming through it. Not so much in the centre, but yes, round about the edges, you can get light coming through, but not so much in the main kind of width of the glass, the girthy part of the glass. It's a lovely word, isn't it? It's like moist. Right, so you see what it smells of? What did they say it smells of? Coffee, molasses, roasted. Don't know what the roasted part is. It smells like sex. Anyway, what does that smell of? I remember somebody said as a kid, "You smell sex." I'm like, what does that actually mean? What does the smell of sex? I mean, there's lots of different smells associated with sex, but I'm kind of thinking, what is the actual smell of sex? You know, just as an overall kind of, you know, ensemble. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway. Right. Getting a little hint of coffee, but I'm having to work at it. You know. That's a wee bit better. Yeah. Get a little bit of bitterness tones, which you could put down to the molasses. You are getting kind of light coffee tones. Roasted, well, again, you could put that towards the coffee. I think overall, you could maybe say it's definitely more of a kind of French roast, or a good Italian kind of espresso kind of smells, I would probably say, which kind of covers all these kind of potential aromas that they've listed in the bottle. Right, there's a slight off-whiteness to the head, if you can maybe see that. So there is a little kind of off-whiteness, so it's not completely, I'm not going to say it's tanned, but it's definitely off-white. So let's see what it tastes like. Right. Yeah. It's one of those beers that you would say is I'm just looking at it because it's got that kind of slightly kind of dry bitterness at the back end that you would also associate with stouts as well and things like that, and porters. It's a kind of strange one. It's not quite a porter. It's like a kind of, I would probably say it's a kind of the next step up from a brown ale, but one step down from a porter, which means it's not as sticky, not as heavily bodied as a porter would be, but still has a kind of closer kind of body match to, like, say, a brown ale. But it says 2.5 out of 5 for sweetness. I would go against that. I would say it's not as sweet as what you'd actually think, which helps because you've got the coffee tones, and there is a bit of kind of roasted and kind of molasses, especially at the back end. You're getting that kind of molassy kind of bitterness, kind of molasses bitterness. at the back end. I'm going to sneeze. I'm sitting here thinking, God, not on camera, seriously. God, don't bloody sneeze. You know, probably blow the bloody tripod over or something like that, you know. Oh, could I just fart instead? Because at least I'd like get a laugh. Nobody laughs at a sneeze. You know, if I get let one go, then yeah, that would probably get a few laughs. But you know, that nose is just like, I'm going to sneeze. And it's one of these ones, it's going to do it when I don't want it to. I don't actually want it to do it at all. But I don't want it to happen at a time where it's even more inopportune. You know, that type of thing. Bloody hell. Try to hold it in. Oh, right, anyway. If it happens, it happens. And if I blow the camera over or whatever, and that type of stuff, then you know what's happened. But yeah, it's one of these ones where you're getting that kind of molasses still bitterness. It's based on that rather than on the hops. You are getting some nice coffee tones. But the mouthfeel is obviously nice, but it's not as overly kind of rich in body as say like a porter would be. So it makes it a little bit more easy drinking. But I would actually expect it to be a little bit sweeter, which for me is actually better because it isn't that way. So for me, I actually think that's a good point. And overall, I think it's quite nice. I like it because it's got that drinkability, it's got that sessionability that you would probably get, you know, you expect from an except brown ale. But you get some of the flavour profile accents that you'd probably find in a porter. And it's better for that. It just has that little kind of bit more of a dimension. What was it? A couple of weeks back, I think I did a hybrid a couple of weeks back. Some stupid hybrid between lager and IPA, and you know, I just couldn't understand why it existed. I mean, it wasn't bringing anything to the party. It really wasn't. It wasn't. I mean, lager is such a low flavoured beer anyway. It's more for refreshment rather than flavour. It's more for kind of crispness than being refreshing rather than busting with flavour. Isn't it marvellous? So to then take an ale that's overhopped with New World ales and put it into that, then well, what are you going to get from the lager anymore? You've basically killed off what flavour it had. But because you've got the extra volume where you don't have the kind of IPA flavours, that lager is now impacting on the IPA flavours by diluting them. And you're just thinking, did you not really think this out? Whereas this is a bit different. This is going the other way. It's kind of like, I'm not saying it's the best of both worlds, but you're getting some of the benefits of one side and some of the benefits of the other. Which this brewery previously that I did with the lager and IPA hybrid, because it was the best of both worlds, well, you weren't getting the best of both worlds. You were actually kind of detracting from both sides. So you weren't getting the kind of main reasons why these beers exist. I mean, if you're doing a kind of New World hoppy IPA, well, the whole idea is going to be all really into your face hoppiness with bitterness at the back end, pininess and all this. You lost that because you diluted it with lager. But then again, also that kind of refreshingness, that crispness, that kind of light kind of graininess that you get with lagers was completely killed off because you basically mixed it with an overhopped IPA. And you're thinking, no, this bullshit. You're not getting the best of both worlds. You've killed both drinks off. You're fucking idiots, you know. Whereas this is different. This is why I'm getting it. This is different. Whereas the case of, I'm getting some of the good attributes of a brown ale, but I'm also getting some of the kind of good attributes of a porter without it really kind of losing out because it's a drink in its own right. It's not trying to be a brown ale, it's not trying to be a porter, and it's not claiming you're getting the best of both worlds, but you are getting some nice benefits from both sides as part of this ale. Yeah, I would say that kind of molasses bitterness is starting to kind of die down a bit. It's not as prevalent as it was. It's still there, but it's not as prevalent as it was. So that bitterness has kind of softened a bit. But I kind of expected that because previously we did the bitter. And the bitter had obviously more bitterness at the start when I first started to taste it, but then I started to become more acclimatised to it. It did kind of die down a bit. Which personally, I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to see it to kind of be a little bit more bitter to it. But it's life. And yeah. It is very drinkable. That's what it is. And it's nice because I could really see this doing well as a winter. Got a good sessionability. You know, you sometimes want the kind of more kind of darker, richer ales in the winter, but I tend to want that anyway. And it just goes well with the kind of weather. You want a kind of darker beer to go with the kind of colder, wetter, kind of windier, and just the kind of slightly unpleasant kind of weather. Especially if you walk to the pub. So, you know, you're coming in wet and you want something a little bit more substance to it just to kind of, you know, help you along. Or even you're just sitting at home, you know, on a winter's night and you just want something just to give you a little bit more. And this ticks the boxes. For me, this ticks the boxes. So this would be a brilliant kind of sessionable ale for the winter time. I mean, it's nice enough to be drinking when what are we now? We're in April. I think tomorrow's going to be 17 degrees. So the weather's warming up. And even then, it's still nice and enjoyable because it has that kind of softness to the palate that makes it more sessionable just because it's not as rich in the body, but the body's still nice. So let's break down the flavours. Right. Start off with, well, there's no mucking about. The malt there at the front of the mouth is molasses. So there's a bit of bitterness there, a bit of that kind of coffee notes. Some people will turn around and say a little kind of that kind of bitterness. It can also be associated with dark chocolate. You know, really high cocoa percentage dark chocolate. And yeah, there is that kind of nice bitter notes just right at the front end with that. You're not getting that much sweetness. There's a bit of sweetness at the front end, but not much. And nowhere near as sweet as what it gives you the impression it would be going by the label, because it says it's 2.5, so it's like kind of in between, half and half. 2.5 out of 5. It isn't. If I was marking that, I would probably say 1 out of 5, because it's not that sweet at all, really. And with that kind of slightly molasses tones coming from the malt and the way the grain is, because the grain has a slightly kind of roasted kind of feel to it as well, and they're all kind of working together, and it all kind of, I mean, there's nothing worse that you have these kind of molasses tones, you have kind of roastiness from the grain, and then you have something that's too sweet, and you're just thinking that doesn't really kind of work. But again, like I said, with the bitter, there's a trifecta of flavours that all seem to be kind of working together and all feel kind of natural and part of each other. So yeah, it's not really that sweet, which kind of ties in with the kind of molassesness of the malt and the slight roastedness of the grains. Moves on to the mid-tongue. And it's kind of very much of the same, although you're starting to get a little bit more coffee tones, you get a little bit more coffee accents. Some people might even construe them just because of that slight molasses edge to the malt. some people might turn around because of that kind of dry bitterness that can be associated with obviously molasses. That can be a tune towards coffee, or it could be a tune towards maybe slightly kind of dark chocolate notes. It just depends how people's palate works. So while they're saying coffee, and I can associate it with coffee, but you could also slightly associate it with very kind of high cocoa, solid dark chocolate. Probably would say it's, for me, I'm getting it more as coffee because it's just a little bit lighter. Because again, a lot of times it helps. I mean, it's kind of borderline, these flavours of going one way or the other. And I think what pushes it towards the coffee is because the body isn't as rich. If the body was richer, then it would probably push it more towards being chocolatey. But because the body is a little bit lighter, a little bit more sessionable, it pushes it more towards the coffee. As it moves to the back of the mouth, again, you're starting to kind of get a little bit more of the kind of molasses bitterness working with the roasted grains. And yeah, when I initially had it, I was getting more bitterness, which I've now kind of acclimatized to, so it's not so prevalent. But for this type of ale, there's quite a nice level of bitterness. I'm not going to say it's a lot of bitterness, but for this one, I would definitely say it's kind of more towards kind of porter levels of molasses kind of bitterness. And yeah, it's quite nice. And the flavours, again, very clean finish. Everything kind of dissipates all as one. There's nothing kind of lingering or hanging back or anyway, and yeah, nothing lingers in the mouth whatsoever. So yeah, very clean, easy finish. And again, that adds to the sessionability of it. So it is a slightly richer ale in flavour wise, but not as rich in the body and in the finish, which does make it more sessionable. And another thing that makes it more sessionable, because it isn't as sweet as what they claim, and that also helps with it being sessionable, because if it was too sweet, or there was more of a sweetness there, then I think it would lose a bit of sessionability, because it would probably get sickening, kind of quicker. Whereas because it has that less is more on the sweetness front, I think that helps with the sessionability, because you won't get so tired of that flavour profile so quickly. I mean, it's one of these things, is sometimes you need certain things to break things up. The thing is, though, as a good example, if you're eating a lot of savoury stuff and you're kind of struggling, I mean, I think if you watch a lot of these kind of professional eaters that do all these kind of challenges, one of the things they will do is, as they're starting to get near the end of their challenge or whatever they're doing, they'll want to kind of introduce kind of sweeter notes to kind of help them get past the kind of wall that they're kind of struggling with, just because there's kind of flavour fatigue. So that kind of sweetness is there to help kind of break that up. The problem is going the other way, is that sweetness can also give you flavour fatigue, but it's not so easy to kind of break that up, even if you try to add, something that's more savoury and things like that. So sweetness can get quite sickening quite quickly, whereas this doesn't suffer from this. So I think, yeah, the label isn't quite right, because for me, I don't think it's as sweet as what they described it. I mean, there is a bit of sweetness there, but there's no way I would ever class this as sweet in any way, shape or form. I think that it's balanced, and I would say the sweetness is slightly on the lesser end of that balance, which for me, like I said, is to benefit. So, after all that, lots of words, lots of movement of the hands and the head, what would I give this out of 10? I actually quite like this, I really do. It's a bit of a strange one, because I'm sitting here and I really do like this ale, and I'm thinking what to give it. But in the back of my mind, I've got something else there to think, well, I don't want to give it too high because it could come back to bite me. Because while I've got the Old Man here, I've also got the vintage Old Man. I think there's only 500 of these made, again, kindly donated by John Morris, and that will be coming up fairly soon. But yes, this is a 6.9%, so this is the vintage version of this, and I think there's only about 500 bottles, limited edition, 500 bottles only made. So I'm very lucky to get a chance to actually review this. So that'll be a good one to look out for coming up. And because of that sitting there beside me, it's kind of slightly trying to influence what I think about this. But for this, I'm relaxing. In its own right, I'm just enjoying this. It's really nice. It's very drinkable, and of course at 4.3%, it should be, because you've got to remember it's only 4.3%. It is very sessionable, but they've got some really nice flavours there that are more attuned towards a porter. And overall, it's a really nice beer in its own right. It's just, you are getting, like I say, you're getting the best of both worlds in some respect. And yeah, I'm kind of thinking, what should I give it? I'm between 8 and a 9, because it really is that good. It really is that nice. So on that basis, I'm going to split it. So I'm going to give it an 8.5. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. It is very nice, very enjoyable. If you don't like kind of porter flavours, then you might not like this. But if you do like a porter or a stout, then this is something to think about as something different, but also slightly similar. So look at it that way. And well, if I bring a good example, there's a lot of stouts and a lot of porters that I've had over the years, and I put this above it because, quite simply, on the fact is that I would want to keep drinking this. I mean, I had ones there, yeah, it's an alright porter, it's an alright kind of stout, traditional stout, things like that, and it's okay. But then you've done the review and you're sitting there thinking, would I want another one? And then sometimes you think to yourself, no, I wouldn't. I mean, nice enough stout, nice enough porter and everything else, but one's enough. I just don't really want it anymore. I mean, I enjoyed it, but there's something there that stopped me wanting to have another one. I'm quite happy to have other types of beer, but I just don't want another one of that. This is different, and that's why I would put it above some porters and some stouts that I reviewed, is because I would quite easily have another one of them without any qualms. And that's the type of thing, is whereas like you review beer sometimes and you're reviewing it on the basis of trying to kind of portray what the beer is like and what it tastes of and everything else, and you're trying to be honest to the beer, which is my first thing, is to trying to be honest with the beer. But sometimes with trying to be honest to the beer, you're not really being 100% honest with yourself. And this is a thing when I'm doing reviews, I tend to be more honest with the beer than to myself. And while that's fine for the beer, and people can go and try it and make up their own mind and everything else, which is fine, because they should be honest to themselves. They don't have any dog in the fight of saying, well, it's a good beer or a bad beer. It's more down to it as a case as, oh, do I like it or do I not like it? That's the reality. But with me, it's a case as I'm trying to kind of be honest to the beer and kind of portray what it's like and kind of describe it and everything else, and then you can make up your own mind. Does it sound a type of beer that you might want to try? And yeah, you might go and give it a go. But then sometimes it's the cases where I've finished it, you know, and I've maybe got, you know, this amount in the glass and things like that, and then, you know, the camera switched off, I'll go and sit down just to kind of finish off the dregs of the glass. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, it was an okay beer, it's quite a nice beer and things like that, yeah. But it's not just quite there for me, you know. And that's it, you know, as a case, it is a good beer, and other people will maybe get it and think it's wonderful and great. And it is a good beer. You know it's a good beer because you're looking at the attributes of it and everything else. It's ticking the boxes. But in reality, it's just not really quite working for you, even though it's a nice beer. Because just because it's a nice beer doesn't mean it's going to be your favourite. You know, there's plenty of really good beers out there that people swear by. Oh, it's a really damn good beer. Yeah. And I can drink it and I can appreciate it, thinking, yeah, it's a nice beer, it's got some nice tastes and everything else and that type of stuff. You can, you can taste the quality of ingredients and everything else, but for you personally, it just doesn't quite work. It doesn't really kind of, tickle the tits, as I would probably say, coming from Scotland. It just doesn't really kind of, squeeze the nipples. It doesn't really float my boat, and you can appreciate it and everything else. And yeah, it's a nice beer, but it's just not quite for you. For whatever reason, it could be there might be an accent flavour that you're just not enjoying, or just how the flavours are that you just. I mean, sometimes with me, it's what's not there. Sometimes it's a case as though you start drinking a beer and you get so far into it. This is really nice, and then it doesn't really deliver where you think it's going to take you. And while it's still a nice beer and everything else, that annoys you. And every time you take a sip, it just kind of reminds you of where you would like it to go, but it's not going there. And while it's still a nice beer, it kind of annoys you from that point of view. You think, no, this is kind of like torture here, because it's like, I want it to go there. It's kind of, everything's pointing it's going to go there, and I want it to go there, and it doesn't. It kind of veers off a wee bit, or it kind of drops off somewhere, or picks up something else. You think, no, I don't want it to go there. And this is the problem, because with the personality of beers and the personality of drinkers. You can have a good beer and a good beer drinker, but sometimes there's a personality clash. And that's what I'm saying about this. There isn't. This is a nice beer. That's fine. Not a problem. Everybody understands that. But it's also a beer that works with me. It's a beer that I'm kind of thinking, this is right on my street. So this isn't just a beer that I'm giving an 8.5. This is a beer where I'd be quite happy to have multiples of it and keep on drinking it. This is a beer where if I was in a pub and I seen it on tap, I'd make a beeline for it. So that's what I'm trying to kind of get across to you, that this beer is better than other good beers just because it works for me. It has that kind of sessionability, it has that kind of porter profile, and for me, it's better than some porters just because it has that kind of uniqueness. And it's just like, well, instead of it just being a porter, rich in body, blah, 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 blah. And this just has that kind of little bit more sessionability, but just has them nice kind of porter accent flavours, and it just all goes together really, really well. So that's what I'm kind of trying to say to you, that this is an 8.5, not just an 8.5 on camera, this is an 8.5 off camera as well, quite easily. So yeah, so I'm doing justice to the beer, but I'm also doing justice to myself, which doesn't always happen. That's what I'm trying to get across. So yeah, so it's 4.3%. It's 500ml. I'll put the price down below because luckily enough I received it as a gift, so I didn't pay for it. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Give it a go if you can. From what John said is that the brewery is really, really good to deal with, because there were some issues with the delivery which wasn't down to the brewery. This is what we're talking about, all the beers, and there were some issues. And the beer was very accommodating to try and kind of resolve those issues, even though these issues weren't down to the actual brewery. But I'll expand on that more when I do the vintage Old Man, because some of that was actually more affecting that beer arriving than this beer and the previous one of the bitter. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on that basis. But anyway, 4.3%, 500ml, 8.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Cheers, and bye for now.